instructions for A2 are when we look at creating a research plan to develop questions related to our inquiry, it helps to break up our research into two sections. For this part, we're just going to be focusing on content research. Content research has to do with the content that your user would like to see in the app. Okay, so the content that you are going to fill your application up with is what we're researching right now. So in this unit, your content research questions have been created for you to scaffold your research development and give you more time to focus on learning the skills research necessary to complete the mobile phone application in time. So what does that mean? In Where's the App, we have given you a ton of scaffolding for these content research questions. So really, you're going to spend the next few classes doing just these 5 questions, okay? Only these 5 questions, not the skills research area, okay? So when you're turning things into Seesaw, I would zoom out by pressing Command 0. I would Command Shift 4 when I'm done with this, and I would take a screenshot of just this section. You guys, the first question out of 5 is super simple. You've already got SDG number 1, and then you just paste in your target, okay? So paste in the goal that you're trying to complete in SDG number 1. Which persona will I choose as a target market, and in which ways can I empathize with them? So when we're talking about empathizing, we're talking about understanding how someone feels and trying to put ourselves into that same mind space. When you're developing any mobile app or web design, or actually any product in general, you really want to look at your target market, the people who are going to be using your item, and think about the user experience and empathize with the user. So what we're doing now is looking at UX design, which means user experience design. So in order to do that, we are going to follow these instructions down here. So the first part of the instructions is click on the skills icon over here. That brings us to empathy mapping, okay? This is a way that marketers and people who are doing user-centered design try to understand more about who their target audience is. So empathy maps are things that we ask people about a certain topic and see what they see, think, feel, hear, say, and do in relation to, in this case, the SDGs, okay? So again, we've got 4 people that we've interviewed: elementary school student, middle school student, high school student, and a parent. So when they were asked about the SDGs in general, this is what they said. So let's look at this elementary school student as an example. So what do they think and feel about the topic? What are their worries or aspirations? Aspirations are like goals. What would they want to accomplish? So their goal would be, I think I want to help save the world. That's nice. I feel hopeful that I can, but need help to start. So immediately, if I'm thinking about developing an app for this user, I would want to feel like I'm empowering them with tools to help this SDG, right? What do they see? I see my parents are happy when I talk about SDGs. I see the school has posters and videos about the SDGs. I see my friends working on projects for SDGs. What do they hear? My teacher's talking about SDGs a lot. My friends say the SDGs will help us save the planet. My parents say they want me to learn more about the SDGs. Say and do, I like the SDGs. I want to help people, but I don't know where to start. Okay. So a lot of these are hinting at a mobile app that would help this student understand the stepping stones. Do you guys remember teaspoons of change from elementary school? So those were like little small points of actions that would lead to a greater outcome. So this student is probably looking for a teaspoons of change type of ideas, okay? And maybe you could put together some quizzes or a game that would be really interesting for them to do. Another thing is they seem engaged in lessons related to the SDGs and are genuinely excited to learn more. Okay, so that's big. If you already have a target market who is on board, meaning they really want to learn about this, that's half the battle, right? If you have a target market who is not on board and does not want to learn more, that's a lot harder to deal with. So it's thinking about your target market in a different way. Sorry, let's go back to this. So which persona will I choose as a target market, and in what ways can I empathize with them? So if I were thinking about this target market, this student, I would try and think about a younger sibling. Maybe I have a little brother who's age 8 or smaller, who probably has some of the similar feelings, right? So if I were to write anything in here, my empathy strategy, I might be saying, I'm going to ask my younger brother if he feels some of the same things that this student does. And when I'm developing my app, I'm going to use my younger brother as kind of a test case to see if they would find this engaging. So when we look down here, these last 3 questions, then we're looking at this part. Now, these are generic resources. So these are things that students of that age have experience and information with. Okay, so if we look at, for example, BrainPop Jr., what do you notice about the site? What do you think? Yeah, so there's a little bit of movement here. There's a lot of colors. What kind of colors are these? These are pretty bright, right? And then what are these? Kind of cartoon characters. So do you think this would be appropriate for if my target audience was an adult? Do you think this would be really engaging to them? Probably not. But check out how simple some of this text is. It's really, really easy to understand. What skills do you need to be a scientist? There's no big vocabulary. This is really basic information, right? And the same with Nat Geo Kids. So there's not really a huge amount of vocabulary that's hard to understand. There's a lot of video content. So in aesthetics, we get into colors, we get into fonts, we get into imagery. So again, those primary colors, red, green, blue, really bright fonts. So here's some examples of fonts that you could use. Now in code.org, when we're actually developing the app, these fonts probably won't be there. But what you could do is download the font and do something in Photoshop if you really wanted it, and then import the image into code.org. There's activities here as well. So this is Common Sense Media apps for 8-year-olds. So those are just ideas for games that you might create to help students to understand the SDG target you're trying to promote. So this is research we put together for you. What if you want to do your own research? You can do that. You can interview your own target market. You would just have to do a little bit of extra work by actually creating an empathy map and doing these interview questions. Okay. So what that looks like is if you click on this, it is a Jamboard that you can copy. So you can't edit this one, but you could duplicate it by clicking make a copy and then just clear the frames. Okay, so if I were to duplicate this one, for example, and clear my frames, then you're just asking all of these questions and answering them with a sticky note and trying to put those together. Okay, so you can do this. The only part of that that's extra is that I would ask you to upload this along with your A2 content research. Okay, so that is one example. You can go through the other examples. There's middle school students, high school students, and parents, and you can choose any one of those, or in fact, create your own if you'd prefer of those personas, okay? So primary or secondary research. Primary research is research that you do when you're actually interviewing. And in this case, I've interviewed these people, so we're gonna use primary research, but secondary research is stuff that you find on the internet, okay, when you're researching items. So secondary research, we found the SDG target, and that was on the global goals. So that is considered secondary research. When we talk about the relevance and validity, is it relevant to the topic? So this is an example. The relevance is the SDG target is the focus of the app I'm creating. That's why it's relevant. And the validity usually speaks to where are you getting the source information from, and is it valid? So some of you may have gone through courses where teachers recommend news websites, .orgs, which means they're nonprofit organizations, or .edus, where they're talking about peer-reviewed journals. Those are all areas that you would likely source information that is valid. So in this case, globalgoals.org is a UN-sponsored website that details the targets of the SDGs. That's why it's valid. So the UN is sponsoring this website, and the information is coming directly from them. And then another source is my teacher. So I'm telling you it's valid, and hopefully you trust me. So that is pretty much the rundown. And then if you guys want to stick around, I'm going to go through this second one, which is the middle school student, because that's a very different app than the first one. Because this student is an EAL student and doesn't understand what the SDGs are. She came into UNIS last year as a phase 2 EAL student, so she's not familiar with the vocabulary around SDGs and sustainable development. So, now she's phase 3 and she understands a little bit more English, but she's still kind of wondering, and her parents are still kind of wondering, why are we talking about SDGs in math, for example, right? So those are things that the app would address different concerns. It would be more of an information app. That's this student right here. So she's phase 2 EAL. Her thinking and feeling is, I feel confused about what the SDGs are and why they're important to me, and I think I can't do anything to help. So she's discouraged about the SDGs because she doesn't understand what they are or why we're placing so much importance on them at the UN school. So this app would be very much more focused on vocabulary that is simple, easy to understand. Maybe you would use something like Quizlet Live to help them understand what some of the vocabulary is. Whereas this student, you'd probably be looking at creating more of like a Kahoot where she can use interesting ways to communicate her ideas, because she's all in. She really wants to save the world by doing these SDGs. Okay. And then this parent is not all in. They're not sure why their kids are learning about SDGs. So this parent actually is the parent of this student. And as a result, their student isn't understanding it from either school or home. They're not valuing it. So that's where those kind of empathy maps interrelate. These are the 4 groups that we've interviewed for you: elementary school, middle, high, and parent. So you can really just use the answers here to fill this out.